Call the meeting to order. Approval of minutes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Oh, my name was misspelled.
Move to approve, except fix Jim's name.
And then one other question, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Any other discussion?
Councilmember Henderson's here, and I don't think she shows up in the, at least let me see. I thought I checked that. And I really wanted her name to be on the minute.
It's not there. I'll just look.
So February 12th, you were here, right? So she's not here, so we need to add her.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other changes? Subject to those, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Unfinished business, Mark.
Okay, last meeting we had a presentation on the Register of Deeds audit report, and there was questions on, two remaining questions about the items that were rejected related to the net of fees and transparency for the Register of Deeds versus the Register of Deeds being a net of fees budget versus an council appropriated budget. And we were hoping to have an opinion from the law department that was an option to be an appropriated versus having to be a net of fees, but that opinion hasn't happened yet. But we do have Register of Deeds Karen Johnson here to address her rational reason for why she believes that she needs to be, address that observation in her rejection.
Thank you. Do I address you, Auditor Swan? And Finance Director Talia Lomax O'Neill, Vice Mayor, and Councilman at Large, esteemed members. Yes, I'm Karen Johnson, and I have here with me my Chief Deputy, Tom Seeley. And to my left here, this is Levy Grant, and she's the accountant. And so basically the fee structure of the Register of Deeds Office is something that is by state statute given to all of the deeds offices in all 95 counties. We need that autonomy to be able to keep the fee structure because for sustainability of services and to make sure that we are able to keep our technology and other operations current with the standards that they place on different deeds offices. We feel like the fee structure will give us the ability to keep the office functioning at a high level. And so all of the deeds offices right now are fee-based, to my knowledge. I don't know if that's any different for anybody else, but I believe all 95 counties currently operate under the fee structure. And that just gives us the flexibility to keep our operations in compliance with the Comptroller's Office because we're also audited by them as well. And we actually have 3 audits. We have one done by Crossland, one done by the Comptroller, and one done by you all. And so we feel that we have come in as a new administration and created efficiencies that we feel will create more transparency. And I just want to be given the opportunity to be able to operate at an optimal level as previous registers have done.
Thank you. Mark, any questions?
Well, that was the language, that was an open item from the report. That was a question about it, so it's up to you if you have any more questions.
Well, thanks for being here. So from my point of view, this one was, we've got the constitutional officer, Register of Deeds, saying that certain things can't be done because of state statute, and the audit found that they could be done, and we were going to hear from Metro Legal, I guess, to give us some further thoughts about that, which hasn't happened, which is fine. But it feels like this is another one that feels binary. It's either allowed or not allowed, and it seems like we ought to be on the same page between constitutionally elected officer and Metro.
Well, there's two parts to it saying, one being net of fees or appropriation, but the other part was saying there's an opportunity to maybe try to leverage some of the Metro systems so there's more transparency instead of having standalone systems. In other words, set up as a separate business unit on Oracle 12 going forward, EBS, and use Metro payroll and those kind of things. Those were that to provide additional transparency instead of it being an entity that's just kind of out there that nobody has visibility to.
I hate to ask Ms. Johnson to come back again, but if we're waiting for legal on at least one of the two things, I feel like we're going to end up kicking into the next.
Yeah, no, that's
And
fine.
I'm really sorry about that.
That's all right.
Another attorney in my office was doing the research, but I think I failed to communicate that we needed the answer, and Mark sent a reminder, and I was covered up and missed the email. So.
No worries.
So
So
keep
I
it
guess-
open.
Yeah, I would have us do that. I don't know if we need a motion.
And I want to have the chief deputy speak to. He's been with the office,
37 years.
37 years. And he pretty much knows how the other registrar's offices operate throughout the state and can give more context to that as well.
All of the state register of deeds offices are constitutional offices, so they all run on their own budgeting, and they keep up with all of the fees and everything that we have to disseminate across the board to the state and to the local governments. So I understand what you're talking about leveraging things within Metro, but it seems to me like we would be having more difficulty if we tried to do that than we would less.
And again, my point of view is this conversation should probably be havable between the office of Metro Legal and just to either take out the finding or to, if it's going to stay in and the rejection's going to stay in.
Yeah, well,
So,
the thing that's a way to provide additional transparency, additional control. They have the option to accept or reject. So.
And I don't think we need a motion to keep it open. Any other discussion at this time?
Do we have to have Ms. Johnson come back?
We can come back, it's fine.
I'd really rather her not.
You're welcome if you want.
We're okay with that.
don't listen to him.
Okay. Next item.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The next item that was unfinished is related to the Collier Engineering investigation report, and you requested to have the Chief Compliance Officer, Judge Patricia Cottrell, to come and give you an update on what she's been working with on that. So she is available, and we can go from there to the report. So if you have any questions, I'll leave it.
I'm
Or you.
Nancy Cottrell. I know many of you.
And the report is revised, it's October 26th revised, March 8th, 2019, correct? That's
Right.
when we're at. Okay, any questions?
If you want me to talk about
Please.
the sort of what I've been doing, and then you can ask questions, but I think the primary thing right now is the scope of contract review. And I'm doing, along with other people, some scope of contract review. We started with this particular contract because issues had been raised, and from that, sort of learning what we could from how that happened and grew. I mean, really what I'm doing is working on recommendations to make sure some things, are tightened up and maybe don't happen in the future. The scope of contract issue here, I emailed you all copies of the letters I sent last week to the 3 department heads of the departments that have been using this one particular contract, and also my backup documents about scope of contract, legal questions of scope of contract, and then the particular contract, the paving contract, and then I think the sidewalk issue under that. And essentially, and I've been working with the department a lot through all this, because the last thing we want is 2 different legal opinions going on. So essentially, the contract that's been, I call it the paving contract. It's not really for paving. It's for engineering and project management and design services, inspection services relating to paving, but I just call it the paving contract, is for if you look at the RFP, which is always incorporated into the contract, and then you look at the task, Exhibit A, which is part of the contract, it's all very much tied to the Public Works paving management program. So if you start with that, then everything that's bought under that contract needs to be related to paving or the management of the project and related activities. So that's essentially how we got to what that is. I've been talking to the departments that are affected about how to get, if there's services they've been buying under that contract that they continue to need, how to get those, and have asked them to talk to the Department of Law about any questions they have about the scope, and to talk to Michelle Lane at purchasing about other contracts or RFPs or whatever they need to do to get those services. So that's where that part is. I am going to expand the scope of contract review to other departments and other contracts. Right now, probably mainly A&E services or professional services in any event, because it really doesn't come into play when you're buying paper and, supplies and that kind of stuff. So it's really that and some of the bigger ones. And then I think what I'd like to do is have some training with contract officers, with contract managers, with people who sign off on the proposals or the work orders to explain what it is, because there's been some real confusion about, for example, that particular contract and whether it was Metro-wide. There have been other departments that have been using it when for engineering services are, it's totally, the services are totally covered. It's just that the subject matter is different. And so there's been some misunderstanding at first that it's Metro-wide, and then perhaps that it covers everything related to right-of-way and not just paving projects. And for example, the sidewalk, I think I sent you the analysis on the sidewalk thing, which is sidewalks under this paving contract use this 20% rule, which goes way back to when Metro settled an ADA discrimination lawsuit and put out this rule that I found a copy of that describes what the 20% is. And essentially it's related to when you redo an intersection or pave a road or whatever, you use at least 20% of the money has to be set aside for doing curb cuts and ramps and ADA compliant types of things. So that's really what it's tied to, and not independent sidewalk things. Now, from going forward, that's what I'm focused on. Going forward, how can we get these services? How can we look at, we're going to look at other contracts. We're going to talk about scope. And the issue with scope really comes down to, it's a compliance issue, but it's sort of looked at generally in the purchasing area as a procurement issue. If it had been included originally, would other people have bid, or should it, if you're going to add it to that contract, should you put it out to bid instead? So it's a competitive procurement kind of issue. Anything else you want to ask me about? We met the other day a little bit to go over a little bit.
Could you talk about a little bit about your request for reviewing the buildings?
Yes. We did look at the billings. There were some issues about the billings and from Collier, and we have, with people from the finance department who have spent a lot of time on this, we are collecting the information. Suffice it to say, the reason it takes a lot of time and the reason that we couldn't go, well, here's the answer, is because we have not been collecting the information and or putting it in a sortable database. So it was sort of, and that's another thing we're working on right now. I've been on emails and group conversations about developing the format for information we want A&E contractors to submit all their billing information on. So in the future, we won't really have this issue. But they've been looking at that, and there's one component, now actually maybe two components that we didn't have that we are getting, so we can get the overview of what the billing's been.
If I could just add a point of clarification, because I brought this up in our last committee meeting. What Ms. Cottrell asked us to do was to look at the billings that were in our queue to make sure that we did some due diligence there and we could release some payments that had not been made. She wanted to make sure that we reviewed those. And then also to assist her with developing a process moving forward. And I think I wanted to make clear to this audit committee that what finance was doing was not an audit, and it was not comprehensive of everything that had kind of transpired. Instead, we were just providing you some assistance in that regard.
Right, and the pending invoices things, finance has done, has spearheaded all that and has given instruction to the departments on what to do with, there were invoices pending, that there was a hold put on payments. And a lot of that has been released, if it was related to subcontractor money, if there were things that clearly there was still no issue about, that money has been released, and instructions have been given to the other departments from finance about how to process those invoices as they're coming in. So the other component of that, though, is the looking back at billing, which is in progress because it takes longer than one might think.
Can I ask a quick question on that? So is everything there, or are you having trouble finding
We're having trouble compiling / analyzing it.
Okay, so, and again, I guess, what does that mean when you're having trouble compiling that? Does that mean that you can't, all the invoices are there and they just have to be brought together, or?
Certain information has to be pulled out of invoices to be looked at. In other words, if we want to analyze billings from a lot of different standpoints,
Right.
Apparently in the past, it's never come up to be able to look at them a certain way that I've asked to look at them.
So you've asked specifically to find something, but
Right.
you're having trouble getting that information.
Right, because it's not electronically possible. And the way that invoices come in, as I understand it now, at least these A&E invoices, contractor invoices, the invoices come in with the backup detail about what was done, how far along in the project it is, and everything, but you wouldn't have necessarily, well, it's project by project, so to look at overall what's happened in a month, a year, or whatever, you wouldn't see it necessarily just invoice by invoice. So
Can I provide an example?
Yeah, okay.
Can I provide the committee an example?
Sure.
Okay.
if you want,
The supporting documentation, when it comes in, we have an automated payment services unit. Those documents are scanned in. So the supporting documentation is coming in the form of a PDF.
right.
Okay.
Okay, so when it's then time to try to cross-reference or review documents across departments, you have to manually look at those PDF documents to assemble a day's worth of activity, especially when you have a vendor that may be billing 3 or 4 different metro departments for projects. So you have to look at what Parks has in their submission queue, what Public Works has in its submission queue, and all of those things come in PDF documents. So it just takes a while so the documentation is there. It's a manual.
Right, it's just, there's no way electronically.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence is the solution to that.
Well, there's a couple different examples I can think of in the legal profession where if you want to get paid, you have to submit your data in a particular format.
That's where we're going to.
Including billing records.
Yes.
In bankruptcy court, if you want to get paid, you have to give the information to the U.S. Trustee's office in a certain electronic format. And same with lawyers who work for insurance companies need to do that.
And that's what Patsy and I were working
Fred
on right
and
now.
ITS.
And ITS, we're sending out
And
those
the departments
instructions
to make
for
sure we've got everything, that we can use it metro-wide.
And then it would
a
go
common
toward,
billing
And we
methodology.
want it electronically and searchable.
and it doesn't get paid if you don't use the format.
Exactly.
Yeah, the contracts all say we can set up requirements for the billing.
So, and then that's awesome. One other billing-related question. Another thing that I'm used to from submitting records, billing records in the legal world or reviewing other people's is that when the occasional red flag shows up, like somebody worked 22 hours in a day, there's some follow-up of like, show me your work, Is there any
That's
of that
part of-
going on right now?
That's part of the plan as well.
It's part of the plan. I think we've asked for, well, there was some publicity about billing being done when something else was
Right.
going on, so we've gotten those. And there are plans to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, lawyers think,
Yeah.
we build in 6-minute increments, not, engineers don't
I
do
got
that.
some few records one time that showed somebody worked 25 hours in a day. And so the records were, the backup was there, but it wasn't credible and
Right.
didn't survive scrutiny. So I want to make sure we're not just getting the backup, which is all that's covered in the audit report, but that there's some sense checking, at least around the stuff that has gotten publicity. And probably, like regularly going forward, that there would be sense checking about that. And then the other billing, that leads to my broader question of, I think Metro Council committees have got questions, you're doing work, Mr. Swan's doing work. At least, like, I'm not going to pretend to claim that I know what the council's going to do, but at least between what you're doing, what finance is doing, what Mr. Swan is doing, I would like to, really the thing I want to hear is that there's not overlap, or if there is overlap, it's, planned overlap. And I guess y'all have met. You guys have a sense of whether there's overlap or who's doing what, that you could give us an update on?
Well, I shared the scope of contract stuff with him, but I actually had sent him the email, I guess, the day before we met or whatever, so I shared that. We had talked on the phone before just to give sort of an outline of what we were doing and make sure he was in the loop and see if he needed anything. I think going forward, there may be times if we get, whoever develops some information, it should be shared. If it's relevant, if it was brought up in the audit or it's relevant to the
Address maybe this specific project, we're not doing any work
Right.
actively related to Collier.
So
What we're doing is waiting for a report to come out for the detailed building analysis.
Right.
And when they have that, we're just kind of monitoring that to say what would be the next steps from there.
Okay, so that actually answers my question. For
So
the
there is
specific,
coordination in that effort. We're
for
not
the
overlapping.
specific billing thing, you're on hold
Exactly.
pending.
Right.
And I've been
Yeah,
requested.
because it's hard enough to get the information collected, analyzed,
Right. And I've been
organized.
requested from the controller's office to monitor what's being done and provide feedback to them. Whenever.
So there's three different entities doing things. The
Well-
comptroller's office is still engaged.
They're just monitoring
They're just
through me.
relying on- yeah.
I'm monitoring here, so the only person that's actively doing anything is the Chief Compliance Officer's directions to the Office of Financial Accountability, who's keying in.
And some of the departments
taking all and some other manually keying in all this stuff and trying to put all the detailed data, hourly billing rates together to do across the board analysis.
So I guess my question was going to be, it follows along with Bob's question, and that is, I know there's lots of questions still flying around out there.
Yes.
So one of the things that the council members had asked was, how do you coordinate so that if there are questions, if things are coming up, how do we continue to get information? And if there are outstanding questions, where do they need to go? Because we're
I
sure
hate
if
to
they
say
were.
this, but probably, just because
Well,
all the
waiting for your hand to go up.
all the departments are making sure they're running stuff through me and, all that. And
Well, so there's different parts to this whole thing. Obviously,
Yes.
there's the audit, there's the things that you're looking at.
Right.
And then eventually there's going to be, it sounds like, changes to the system that we use.
Right.
In terms of-
We're just going to try to put some tools out there so we
Right.
can,
Right.
it won't be as
So better tools.
labor intensive to
Analysis.
compile.
I think council members are probably going to want to know, how do these things move forward in the future?
Yes.
In terms of how do they get checked, maybe double checked? And if there's a question, how can you pull the information out of the data that's
Right.
filed?
Right, and like I said, I really think that's a large part of what I'm here to do is sort of make sure going forward, we're tightening up things, we're making sure we're putting in whatever safeguards and additional tools. Apparently until this came up, nobody thought about, we need to be able to calculate some things in a different way, quickly.
So, and again, this goes back to, at some point, I think our Public Works Committee is going to formally engage, not that they haven't already, but they're going to want to call people in and say, okay,
Yeah.
somebody kind of explain what's going on, and then where are we going with this so we can actually follow it.
Right.
And it sounds like, at least at this point, if people have questions, if the Public Works Committee wants to get together, you're the contact.
I would be the contact. I mean, obviously, there's some questions that Public Works would be when you're talking about exactly what they're going to do on particular things going forward, that would still be a Public Works question. But
Well, and
I'm happy to go, and share whatever information.
Well, you may just have to stay up here. No, I think
I'll just set up in a room.
Well, I think what we're trying to do is figure out what the concern is that if we start asking Public Works questions, Parks questions,
Right.
whatever,
Right.
then there's going to be too much information flying around. So one of the things that I think the council wanted to do was figure out where is the central source of information. If we have questions outstanding, where do we need to send them? And it sounds like that we send them to you. And then you
Send
can
me to
feed them
me,
out.
I can feed them out. That's what I'm saying. Everybody seems to be running stuff through me and let me know what's going on and everything. And so, I'm not a department head, but I can make sure everybody knows what.
Well, we know where you are.
That's
so-
right. You do. You know what my car looks like.
Yes,
so.
I know.
Do you have something?
Well, I appreciate this, and in terms of answering a question or a set of questions for your office to do this, the thing that I'm never seeing is that fundamentally money comes in and sidewalks come out. And the analytics of that process, what is the cost per linear foot of sidewalk? Is that a good deal? What would we expect that price to be? Since Metro has a lot of experience with other vendors too, what is the answer to that question? So would your department, at the bottom of this data dive, will you be able to answer that?
Probably not.
Then-
Public Works may have some other information that they could do it.
Then how do we get that question answered?
You know, a while back, we actually did performance reviews. And this is a long time ago.
I got the report back here.
Yeah.
And I believe one was about best practices. And I believe one was either some components of Public Works or Public Works. It was like paving, how you go about doing the paving. But
Yeah.
that was pretty much under, about 2 administrations ago, there was a lot of performance audits that you would bring in best practice folks and outsource it, and they would say, here's national standards, and
This is where you
take
fit.
it or leave it type of thing.
And what we have on the recommended audit plan, you'll see something related to that. We want to get to that in the agenda.
And I don't know if that old report has anything in here, in the report of anything we're talking about.
It doesn't necessarily talk about engineering, it talks about milling
Okay.
rates and productivity and milling. So that's about as far as it goes.
I don't know how you wait for next year for this, which is something that fundamentally we should know. And if we don't know it, then what do we have to do to learn it? And I think the committee owes the public that answer. And if we have a missing capability, then let's fix the capability. If we have a missing reporting, then fix the reporting. But this is the whole purpose of audit, is to discover these things about ourselves. And just that basic question of what is the linear, I mean, it's a very knowable output. Now, there'll be a lot of paperwork and costs and back and forth, but I think it's our job. So I can't say we wait for next year to know something that fundamentally we should totally know. I mean, how is it that we don't know what it costs per linear foot of sidewalk? That's not rhetorical. That's a real question.
I mean, this is my take on it. If you want to go in and calculate a cost per linear foot, I think that that's possible, okay? In short order, if you want to compare that to an industry best standard, that's a different question, because then you have to know what that industry best standard is, and you also have to, for comparison purposes, it probably would cost you something different in a community where they're all flat streets versus if you were dealing with going around a mountain. But, I mean, I would just say that I think that kind of work, as the chair said, is within a performance audit. And I think if this committee wanted to suggest that Mr. Swan initiate a performance audit, I would support it.
Well, why can't we extend this work into the performance aspect?
I don't think that's your charge, is it?
Well, performance audits are part of the committee's charge.
Well, I
we're
was
saying-
speaking to Ms.
And that's what I was saying. Well, on the agenda, we have, part of the
Oh, yeah,
agenda
that's
is
not
to
mine.
approve the current year's
That's
work
what I
plan.
was-
It was deferred last meeting. And on that is a recommendation for a performance audit and more it
Yes.
morphs into something bigger than, I think maybe it needs, we can discuss that, I think, when we get to the work plan agenda.
Yeah. I think it's needed. I mean, I agree with you that it's needed.
Well, I think it's surprising to people that it's not, that we're having even this discussion. That we don't know what it costs per linear foot, that nobody is measuring the outputs, so to speak, with the inputs on this contract, right? Or any contract, or any A&E contract, or...
I think,
I mean, there
as
is
I said,
another-
I think you can determine a cost. Whether or not that's a reasonable cost is a different question.
Well, you have to start with knowing something.
Yeah. There's another contract for engineering services related to sidewalks, a different contractor and another contract. And then there are the people who actually pour the concrete, who actually do the work and not just the engineering design services. So I can ask the question. I'd be happy to ask the question and find out the processes that they would go through to do that if they have the information.
And to the all-in number, I think
Right.
is
Public Works could give you a
appropriate.
number.
Right.
Well, because in all of this, it underlies all of this. You can talk about paperwork and appearance and other stuff. Ultimately, it's, what are we paying for sidewalks, and is it more than we should, or is this a fabulous deal and not to, not to worry about it? Mm-hmm. Truth is a defense, and if it's a good deal for the city, then you worry less about maybe whether our paperwork was perfect or, But unless you're, not as the non-lawyer, just as a business person, that's what you want to know. And I would be grateful if you could at least lay out the process for us knowing it.
Okay. I'll be glad to ask them what it would, if they have it, if they don't have it, what it would take.
Well, how do you do
to get
this?
it. Yeah.
And Mark has a lot of talented people working for him that are good with numbers and finance, and I
That's
think
good.
to the taxpayers, that's why they're employed.
Bob, you have something?
I was just going to say, it sounds like we're going to talk about that in a little bit for the work plan.
Yes, Vice Chair.
I've got, related to that, it's kind of a bookkeeping question. When the contract is signed, paving contract, and we're going to do the 20% associated work, is the 20% section, is that a separate part of the contract? In other words, we're going to pave,
No.
and then we're going to do sidewalk. We expect to do some sidewalk work.
No, the way it works is, I think, I haven't walked the paper through, but I've had it explained to me, because I have all those questions too. How does this physically work? When they decide we're doing X project, I don't know, let's say widening Hillsborough Road, although I don't think that's a real project. But anyway, they project X amount of money is going to be required for that, let's say $1 million. 20% of what would be required for the paving has to be set aside to do the ADA compliance sidewalk and pedestrian access. It's ramps and it's curb cuts and it's, if you have more money left over, that doesn't take all the money, then you can do some pedestrian access stuff. But it's project specific. It's 20% of a particular project is supposed to go.
When we're billed for it, when the city is billed, is that the sidewalk part is a separate part of the billing? In other words, it looks like bookkeeping. You could assign accounts to the sidewalk component, and when the billing goes out, it's obvious how much is on the 20% apart, and is it 20% or is it 15? Looks like accounting or bookkeeping could segregate those costs when the billing is made. And maybe I'm not making sense.
I know, you're making sense, I just don't know the answer right now.
They all have account numbers, you know, this is
Yeah,
labor on
right.
the sidewalk, this is
Right.
concrete on the sidewalk. And if it's billed that way and it's kept up that way on the books, the cost should be pretty obvious.
Well, and I don't really know how their books are set up, but this is under the paving contract. The 20% is under the paving contract. They've got a separate sidewalk contract for engineering services related to sidewalks. I don't know how their books are set up in terms of the categories that they track it in, how they track all that. I know they have to track purchase order to contract, and the invoices all have to be tied to that.
Primarily, it's charged to a capital project, so whatever that capital project is where pretty much all the money's going to. You don't see it broken down into subcomponents within that capital project.
And that's why we're trying to come up with the agreed-upon categories.
Vice Mayor?
Just a quick response to what Councilman Cooper was talking about. And we may talk about it here in a few minutes anyway, but I know that we get information from people in different parts that can measure the cost of a sidewalk because they tell us this is what Indianapolis does, this is what Louisville does, this is the cost. So I think it can be done. The thing I would caution about, because I think you're right, we want to compare apples to apples. So before we start doing this, we ought to look at what other cities, if other cities are actually able to measure it, we ought to figure out how they're measuring it and then measure it the same way so we can actually get a sound comparison.
So I sense we're going to move on shortly. So I had 5 complaints about the report previously, and we've talked about 2 of them. We've talked about the legal analysis of what's in the contract and what's not in the contract having been supplied, and that changed a recommendation or a finding in the report. That was allegation B. We've talked about allegation C, which is about the billing, and there's more work being done on that still. So I guess we'll find out more about that in the future. The other 3 issues that I had, which I just want to mention briefly, because whenever we get back to this, I'm still going to want to talk about it more, is the second finding in allegation A, that there was not preferential treatment. I won't repeat what I said last time, but I still believe the entertainment was supplied for a reason, to influence discretion. Discretion was exercised. All that discretion was exercised in favor of one company, and I think that demonstrates preponderance of evidence all day long. So that one I'm going to want to talk about more. Then allegation H, that's the one that was the emergent allegation, and I think the facts in the report make it clear that it absolutely positively happened. The timeline shows it only got fixed because it got discovered during the audit. I think that ends up needing to be changed to indicate that there was evidence to support the emergent allegation. And then finally, when this finally gets to a resting place, I'm going to want to know if Public Works wants to update their management responses. As I've said previously, I feel like they're a little tone deaf at a minimum, but since this report really isn't to the finish line yet, because there's work ongoing, at least on C, I'll want to give them a chance to update the management responses.
Okay, noted. Anything else?
And another question for our compliance officer. If you didn't mind, on G, the prior employment with contractor is not cited in the Metro Code of Law as a conflict of interest. So a question for your wisdom would, at the end of this, are there sort of ethical or code of conduct changes that should be explored?
Yes.
And your recommendations for that?
Yes, I had not specifically thought of that one, but there, for example, right now, the Metro standards of conduct for Metro employees says one thing. The code of conduct for procurement for example, under one, you can take gifts up to a certain amount. Under the procurement one, you can't take any gifts. And the way it's written, I think it needs to be clarified to what extent one applies to only certain people and to what extent, or does it apply everywhere? Because the language is not as clear as it might be. So there are things like that.
And there are lots of different roles. Did you design the contract for your former employer, or are you supervising the contract for your former employer? What are our revolving door rules in general? But then I, again, appreciate you looking at this with fresh eyes, and I think your recommendation, if any, would be appropriate for us to hear.
Sure, I'll look at that.
Yes. And one question on allegation F. I'm not even sure if it's relevant, but it was on page 20. It's 3, 4, and 5. Cursory review of Collier Engineering invoices found that Benny Ward is billed as a senior project manager. 4, a cursory review of Collier Engineering invoices did not find any instances where Marty Zygas was billed as a senior project manager. But then 5 turns around and says that Marty Zygas said he billed at the time as senior project manager. So it sounds like, at least on 4 and 5, there sounds to be, maybe the review just didn't find anything, but it sounds like he is billing himself as a senior project manager, just like Benny Ward was. It just seemed inconsistent.
And are they billing at the same rate? I don't remember exactly the category, but they're billing at the same rate.
Okay, so at one place, we couldn't find any instances, but in the next sentence it says he was doing it occasionally. So I'm just saying, I don't know, when something like that happens, when it's not clear, I think you go back and check and try to figure out what is it.
Right, and if we come across in our analysis of things, something that is different from what's in the audit, we'll be sure to send it over.
Thanks.
Anything else? Well, having compliance in your title, I think you'll be here a lot. Thank you. You're welcome to stay.
Can we ask one?
This is going to be a big job.
Just, if there's a further updated report, would you mind giving us a red line version so we can see what the changes are? Because I've been having to do page-by-page comparisons to see where the changes are. So thank you.
Okay. And there were 36 members of the council waiting outside.
Did they take numbers?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just let me know if I can answer anything.
Okay, Mark, I guess it's
That was the chief complaint. The next
we'll
one,
just keep this one open for now. As we said, now let's go on to the,
is that go, all right. Then the next one would be, we issued a revised report on the Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools investigation report related to procurement matters. And we were trying to address, after I had some discussions with Councilmember Mendez, trying to address a different approach. We kind of took a different approach of saying, instead of a conclusion of substantiated, unsubstantiated, it's kind of the same wording, but change it to evidence, or there was no evidence, or there was evidence of, and tried to address the specific elements of the allegation, and trying to hit elements of, this is a procedural policy that there was no evidence they followed the policy. Kind of, if you had a sole source contract, the procurement was justified as a sole source contract, but the policy to have a written determination of the sole source was not there. So each one of those elements is included on. And then the overarching allegation was there malfeasance on the part of the new administration and all these procurements, and we tried to address that on every single one. And, we had it at the very beginning of the body of this, but it wasn't real clear to every reader, obviously, and so we made an attempt to try to address that issue. And that's why the revised report was out.
And do you mind, because I do appreciate the couple meetings we had, and just for fellow committee members, after we talked about it for a while, it seemed like the biggest point of deviation in our perspective was that the report was written in assuming that there had to be an intent to defraud, active malfeasance element for every allegation. And so even in the previous reports, even if a policy had been violated, if there wasn't a smoking gun of active intent to trick, fraud, steal, then the finding was unsubstantiated, and that led to Mr. Swan wanting to stand by his report, and me feeling like, it says right here the policy got violated, how come it says unsubstantiated? And what we talked about doing was, you'll see that he, on page 3 of the report, he added near the top, general overall allegation, which is about, talks about whether there was an intentional effort to circumvent purchasing procedures, et cetera. And then the individual allegations were broken down, this time more in elemental, was the policy followed or not followed. So when in allegations A, E, F, G, H, L, M, N, O, all show some degree of that there was evidence of a policy not being complied with, as opposed to where it used to say unsubstantiated. That's based on our conversations, acknowledgement that policies weren't followed, and so that A, E, F, G, H, L, N, and O all had some amount of evidence that the policy wasn't followed. But for the general overall allegation, Mr. Swan's finding is that he did not find evidence that the management team was intentionally circumventing purchasing procedures and sometimes federal regulations in an effort to get private gain. So I do appreciate the meetings we had. I do feel like the report is more clear because it acknowledges in these 8 or so allegations that there was not full compliance with the various policies, and separates out the whether his office feels there's an intent to do something bad that went along with it.
I have a question. How do you establish intent?
How do you establish intent?
Yes.
Well, when you have some...
that it was, that they didn't intentionally circumvent. At what point do you think you established intent?
We're not saying we saw no evidence that there was intent. Doesn't mean it could not be there. It just means we saw no evidence in our review. And so from that perspective, saying there was no a wire transfer from Panorama to a MNPS executive team member. We didn't see that, in the documents that we looked at in our investigation, or any testimonial evidence during interviews that anybody said that had happened.
Well, and from my perspective, the shift from substantiated, unsubstantiated to did find evidence or found no evidence, while maybe John would tell me I'm just being a lawyer, but I think the standards for certified fraud examiners are they're supposed to say whether they found evidence or not for individual elements of things, and the substantiated, unsubstantiated sounded like a final conclusion that it happened or didn't happen. And I think the point that is emphasized more is, at least on that general allegation, that there's not a finding that there was intentional wrongdoing or not. It's just his office didn't find evidence of it.
Okay, lawyer, what's intent?
We all know what intent is. It's what you think it is.
You need to go to law school.
Any other comments about this? Yeah.
So a couple of questions about the report. These were just things as I was going through it that I had questions about. Allegation B talks about this Northwest Evaluation Association contract. And I think there was a question, the contract was not to exceed $911,000. And you found that there was evidence that it did exceed it. I think my question, this is just a policy question. The review of the contracts went from February 1st, 2017, I think through August 23rd, 2018. Is that right? Stand on number 4.
Yeah, right, 4. That's correct.
So at that point, I guess from a question of how they evaluate these things or how they keep up with them, was there any checking after August 23rd, 2018 to make sure that no extra money was spent? Because the contract reviewed until 2019.
Which one? I'm trying to think of this one. When we originally issued this report, which I don't have on there, it goes back to that, around that time frame. The time frame when we were shutting down the work on that allegation.
So nobody's gone back to check to see if
Yeah, some of these we
anything
went back and looked, but
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I don't think there was anything else on this one, but I can look and let you know. But,
Okay.
And the issue here was they were not using procurement or anything. They had their own in-house purchasing front-end system that doesn't really track all this cost back to an agreement to know what was charged to them.
Okay. I guess it's one of those questions where obviously it looks like policy was violated. How do you make sure that it didn't continue to be violated? Allegation D, it looks like I had a question about the Learning Forward contract. This is on page 11. The contract was not to exceed $64,490. That's for a one-year contract. Either there was a second contract or it's just one, but if you look at number 5, they exceeded the amount of the contract in fiscal year 2017, and then there was an extra amount in fiscal year 2018. So do we know if there was 2 contracts, or did they put these 2 together and just exceed it once?
I have to read it closer then.
Okay. And it may be these are things that you have to just come back with.
I'll have to come back to you.
Just in terms of looking at the numbers. On allegation E, again, this is a policy thing. The contract was not to exceed $50,000, but it looks like it exceeded the contract again, $51,000. Not by much, but it just was, it's another policy question that exceeded the contract amount. I think there might be one more. And this was just on, this was allegation H. This was the one about the honorariums. And this is just an overall question. I understand that I think it, in one year it was not put in, and then there was a follow-up by Dr. Felder to actually get the disclosure of interest form correct. But is there an actual policy that says that you cannot accept an honorarium?
There's something in there where I can't tell you, I don't have their policies memorized. I don't use them every day, but I believe there's something in there where the superintendent can approve certain honorariums.
Okay, and I guess my question is, when we're doing these reviews and you find these things, obviously there was a correction on the disclosure of interest form, but is there a follow-up if you look at the form itself, the disclosure of interest form, and the conflict of interest policies, to note that there may have been a violation of that as well? I don't have the conflict of interest form.
I know we looked at that. There's something about
but I thought there was something that just said you can't accept an honorarium.
I'm just trying to think.
And if we're going to come back with
And
this...
we have some open questions.
We're open question. I'll get you an email back on that.
And we'll just keep this open.
That's fine.
At the next meeting.
I believe
Can I
that...
ask a general question, Chair? Can I just ask a general question? Do they have their own separate conflict of interest policy?
They
or do they follow?
That was on the report. They have an ethics and conflicts of interest and acceptance of gift
So they've got a
policy.
a separate thing adopted by the board. I just want to be clear about that.
And there's a form in I don't have it here. I have to go grab it. But I think there's a disclosure of interest form that says what you can do and what you can't.
Okay.
And if you don't mind checking that, just to
Yeah,
make sure.
I remember looking at that, and I want to say there was an exception with the superintendent approves it, and that was, when we followed up, that she had the approval of the superintendent.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, part of me just says there's, because of some of the numbers involved, I think I'd like to go back and check. And again, I think the report is in a much better format. It's easier to understand and to see. But if there are problems with policy violations, I mean, part of this whole process is to figure out what they are and then provide that information to the school system so that they understand what those policy violations are and they don't make the mistakes again.
Well, along those lines, The corrective action plan that's here has got 3 recommendations to it, and especially now that there's some evidence found supporting allegations A, B, E, F, G, H, L, N, and O. Do you think there's any more recommendations that you'd want to make to them for the school board to decide what they want to do for a corrective action plan? Or do you think the 3 that you've got, 3 recommendations you've already got cover it?
Well, I'm saying I think we covered it with the area on the sole source to follow their policy and to, when they're doing selecting someone sole source for professional competency, they need to document their process of determining why that person meets that criteria.
But what about like the one that Mr. Shulman was just mentioning about disclosures? Do you think there's any recommendation that needs to be made for them?
I don't know if there's, in that sense of, well, I'm trying to think, I thought he was talking more during the investigation process when you see some potential violation of the disclosure that you address that issue. I don't know if there.
I heard, and I mean, you can speak for yourself, but I was hearing more, now that we see, some evidence for this 8 or 9 of them, and some of them are pretty precise little policies, whether, I was hearing it to be more, is there a recommendation that will address getting compliance with those specific policies?
Well, that's what we tried to, I'll look again, but I think that what we had here was tried to address the specific issues that we saw and related to federal. You need to use the more stringent rules, federal guidelines, or your own policy, which sometimes they were kind of picking and choosing. They were contradicting each other, so they need to straighten that out, and that they need to comply with. That's when you're using federal grant money. And then the other part was mainly the documentation of when you had exceptions, and that was addressed there. And then the disclosure is just,
The corrective action plan, number 3, talks about trying to keep up with these things.
Trying to keep the dollars in sight.
If they keep violating and keep going over the amount of
that's the twist in that one.
You want to make sure that there's a plan in place so that they know when they're up against the limit, so they don't.
Well, that's what we're saying. They're going to be going to I-procurement. That's the plan, at least, and I think that's July 1st. So they'll be going to I-procurement July 1st, and in there, as long as they do a good job of issuing requisitions and flipping to purchase orders, it will not allow them to approve a purchase order if there's not money in the contract value. So that's how that would be controlled.
I think what Councilmember Mendez is talking about is making sure that we have enough recommendations in here so that the system's in place so that they.
And I'll have to visit again, but I think we.
And if there's a question about the conflicts of interest form, whether you need something in here or not, just to make sure people remember what's in it, remember what they signed, remember to document it. I think there was at least in one of these places, there was a payment that wasn't made until a year later on a trip repayment. You want to make sure that there's something in the system that triggers a reminder so that these things get done. And I don't know. I'm not sure everything else that needs to be in here, but I know that 3, I think, will take care of particularly.
Well, on the payment, it never got to the payables to be paid.
Right.
So that was and it was not a billing. It was a marketing, so it wasn't put into, Scholastic didn't have it in their billing system, so there was not a receivable, you'd think of a Dunning request coming in. And so that's what we've followed up with them. All they do is take that, and if they receive any funds, they offset it against their cost for doing the event.
I just think we want to make sure that when these errors occur, that we have that corrective action plan deals with them and gives them a chance to put a system in place where it protects us in the future.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, on item 3, which is really responsive to, I guess, page 22 of the original report. I don't have the extended report. this amazing sentence, Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools does not have a consistent, reliable method to track expenditures per contract, per scope of work, or per vendor in order to ensure contract limits. Which is just an amazing sentence. There's nobody from public school MNPS here.
No. They typically, they typically have their board meetings on the same night that we have ours.
Is there any sort of view, I don't know, from your department who's worked on this, how much outside contract money there is in the MMPS budget?
We wouldn't know. I mean, he mentioned R12 implementation. The council generously approved that project in the capital spending plan for us to upgrade our accounting system, and they have decided to join us to come on to our enterprise business system so that they can use our procurement system, where then we will have that visibility. So I don't know what they're doing today to try to keep track of that.
But you would think the outside amount of money, the contracts, is a very large amount of money.
It's huge.
Huge, huge. How is it for a huge amount of money you can have this sentence, does not have a consistent, reliable method to track expenditures? That's just amazing in itself. And then this business of Article 12 fixing the problem, it lightly tested, not placed into production. I don't know how do you accept something that's lightly tested and in the future as being a fix, so to speak, on something that kind of covers such a massive part of Metro spending?
Well, the central government already uses procurement for our purposes, so we know it's a proven product. We're just going through an upgrade right now. It's just that schools has not been on that platform to use the procurement system. So it's a proven platform in terms of...
You have great confidence.
Yes.
With your experience in R12.
Yes.
And so it's not the product, it's that MMPS has no experience in implementing it.
Right. They will just now be coming on board using that. As I said, I don't know
So
what
it has
they're using
been
today.
heavily tested by you, just not tested by them.
Right, they haven't experienced that much with the new procurement
Because
platform.
we've been using our procurement now for years.
Okay, so the note here is really about them and not about the rest of Metro, that they're new to it, they haven't implemented that. How would one, since you've got all this experience, ensure successful implementation? Is there any coaching that Metro can give?
They are on the implementation team. ITS is guiding that effort, and a team of consultants. It's a very expensive product, so...
For which its own contract needs to be on the R12.
Exactly. So there are lots of people here, and they will be testing modules. I think that's maybe in his audit plan as well, to look at how well that project has been implemented, that's something that's actually on your scope because it was such a large project. So there are many, many people touching. If you just think about an enterprise accounting system, there are hundreds of people involved in launching with that launch.
And so they just, there's no, again, the language is consistent, reliable method. There just hadn't been anything prior to R12?
I can't speak to what schools have been
manual
doing.
systems that they've kept up with.
Or do they have a system, or they just use a spreadsheet?
They have a bolt-on that they built to help them in purchasing.
So they've got like a custom
built that they had
something.
CSS built several years ago under Dr. Register.
Okay.
Right. And then with nobody from MNPS, I had a series of other questions which I don't think that we can answer, such as why are we exempting professional services from competitive awards? I mean, why? Aside from just this general ethics question of how can you accept any money from anybody, I mean, but I'm assuming, Mark, that you need somebody from MMPS to answer those questions. Okay, all right. And one quick question, final question on piggybacking contracts, which is, and I know you will have some experience in auditing piggybacking contracts because there's just the general question of, does it just add volume to a bad contract? We're piggybacking on somebody else's contract, and maybe that was no good, but we've doubled down and adding volume to a bad contract. How do you solve that problem?
How do you solve that?
That would be
That's it.
third
I
party.
can tell you what we do.
What do you do? Very good. Okay.
I can tell you,
No.
I'm not sure what Metro Schools
it's
does, but in instances where, because we don't take piggybacking lightly,
Okay.
so if someone proposes that we piggyback particularly on a state contract, we have to do an evaluation, and we have a process in place where I personally have to sign off on it before it can move forward with approval. So staff is not able to move that forward without my consent.
So learning from your experience, would that maybe be a material, would these make for a recommendation also?
Well, I mean, the other
Yes.
approach is to say that, when you're trying to say, how do you demonstrate that you got the best value? And the only way to demonstrate that is through competitive process. Short of that, it's very difficult to show your due diligence in your process. And when you have another entity has done it, and they followed their competitive bidding procedures, then they have demonstrated that demonstration. So the goal is to saying that even though you may say it's not the best thing, they did through the process to demonstrate that they did a due diligence at a certain point in time. Now the question is that still good
And
a year later?
I'll just speak from experience. Sometimes that's perfect, but sometimes when you look at the due diligence that the original person put out there in their original proposal, it's not exactly the scope that you need. So you have to look at volume, and particularly volume and scope before you make that decision. You just can't look at, well, they did it here, so we can just grab that contract and piggyback on it. It really isn't necessarily always going to be your best deal. So there is an additional step you have to take.
And I appreciate your extra level of scrutiny for Metro Classic, so to speak. And I wonder if, it should be extended as a recommendation over to MMPS from that standpoint. But, okay, well, without them here, again, some of these other things, just to wonder back some of these just basic questions that I come through this. But again, the astounding thing is that you would have such a large amount of money that would have no consistent, reliable method to track expenditure, and made me kind of fall out of my chair a little bit when I read it.
You have something to
Just because I know the report's obviously going to get some media attention shortly, the revised report. I want to make sure with the new format that we all have a common understanding of how to interpret the format. And I'm interpreting it that, again, you've separated out general allegation that there was somehow an intent by senior leadership to commit bad acts. And that's been separated out from a series of allegations A through O. And on the allegations A through O, there has been evidence reported in the revised report that find that there were policy problems or deviations from policies on, I think it's allegations A, B, E, F, G, H, L, N, and O, right?
If you say so, I haven't kind of summarized them.
The revised report finds that on a whole lot of allegations that there were violations of policies.
Right. All right. Depends how you define a lot, doesn't it?
Mr. Swan,
No.
what allegations did you find that policies weren't followed?
No, I have to go count them all up. So.
Yep. It's important. It's on TV for Metro YouTube,
Okay.
and the media's going to report it, so we might as well be accurate
No, it's
about
like
it.
that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. 9.
so it was 9.
9 sub-point, at least on 9 different ones. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's like 16, so 9 out of 16.
Okay. And then on the general allegation about whether there was an intent to do wrong, the way to interpret the finding is that you don't know one way or the other, right?
So we saw no evidence that supported that
And so
defeasance.
not in a position to say one way or the other whether there was an intent to intentionally violate these policies.
Correct.
I just want to make sure, since it's a new format and it's going to be out there for a lot of people to look at, that we're of a common understanding that there's the 9 policies that there's evidence to support there were violations of, and just not enough evidence that you were able to see to have a finding one way or the other about whether there was intent to violate the policies on purpose. And so thank you.
Okay, so we have some open questions, and we'll keep this.
Just a real quick
Yes.
question, following up on Councilmember Cooper. Is it appropriate to invite somebody from the school board here or from the school system here next time to address any questions that you might have?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Feeling.
The next item on the agenda is the report. We kind of combines with the approval of the work plan and the request for audit assurance services when the call went out from various, starting on page 40, lists the various requests related to, I guess we'd say contract public works and architectural engineering vendors.
And I will
Right,
again
yeah.
recuse myself and turn this over to the Vice Chairman.
And then let me kind of jump to the recommended audit. I made some changes to the recommended audit plan, and then we can come back and visit that. On page 55, I had a recommended, so based on our conversation last time, what I have recommended is to do vendor audits for approximately 10 architectural and engineering firms in the audit plan. That could be more or less, but it's going to take 300 to 400 hours if we're doing it on each one. Could do 10 this year, 10 if there's results from that. Could do 10 the next year. And then I initially put, some of the question was how do we address the issue of the sidewalks, the paving, performance audit, and I had recommended that we do, initially I talked about putting just an overall performance audit of all public works, which the last one was done in 2002. But even then, that one didn't address everything. And then so the question is, do you want, should it be an audit of everything, or should it be a subset? The plan that I gave you last time would say, let's look at horizontal construction, infrastructure construction related to sidewalks, and one for paving, which I still think that might be a better approach than trying to do everything. So that's in the plan, and then there's just the other items that from the request that came in. I'm trying to think, is anything else on there? Those were related to that. And then the Metropolitan Clerk had made a request for the lobbyist disclosures in comparison to candidates' financial disclosures. And so that was I put that on the plan. And then, did I do the fire department? I did this Saturday, so I'm sorry. And the fire department had requested related to the fire marshal's office, which I did put that on the plan. They put some other stuff on IT support and some IT things that I did not put on the plan. There's a whole bunch. Basically, everything's on the plan is page 55. And so that's where we are. So then you can go back depending on what you want to do. We have, with the help of the Department of Finance, starting on page 45, is a list of all the architectural and engineering contractors. And I have like a 3-year paid history, but when you go to the right, there's a transaction amount that's for the the scope that was basically used for the Collier review, July 1st of 2016, and February 21st, 2019. That's an amount for that period, more of a 2 fiscal years plus current total amount in the total transaction account. These are amounts that were committed or received. And so if you do the top 21, that represents 92% of those dollars and 81% of the transactions. On the right, we got Council Lady Virtue's request, which ones were included on that. They're all going descending. There was one CPS land that was on her request that Metro does not have a contract with, and we have not made any payments to. So the recommendation is first to do vendor audits. And I should have put that on page 48 are some recommended objectives for those vendor audits. You requested the Director of Finance, Lomax O'Neill, and I, we met and came up with objective questions, and I have a more detailed vendor audit program that we can go into more detail if you wanted to address those. So the thing is, on the audit plan, do you want to do vendor audits? If you want to do vendor audits, how much do you want to do? And then the performance audit, do you want to do a performance audit of Public Works? Of everything they do, or a subset, or one thing we can do is say, do an initial pricing under our contracts for the different major functions and come back to you and say, here's how much it's going to cost to have this accomplished.
I just want to ask you a capacity question. How much capacity do you have available to complete all of these projects?
Well, that's
within
the plan. That
timeframe?
plan is limited to our capacity when with a certain turnover factor put in.
So you're assuming then that everything that you've got listed back here you can do?
About one page. The other pages are things that I've received requests for, or other people have thought about, or potentially, or came off the old plan that are there if you wanted to substitute something or you come up with something else. It's
So I'm
really,
on page 55. You say you can do everything on 55 and 56?
no, just 55. The plan, that's just other potential audit engagements on 56.
But you're saying
Our capacity.
it's agreed upon procedures, though, on some of this. It's not as detailed as...
It depends on how you want. You can call it agreed upon procedure. We can do it that way, or as a
Page 48, I assume those are some agreed upon procedures you were listing.
right. The high-level objectives.
objectives.
I can give you the vendor audit program that I developed from my previous life and
You kind of collectively agreed that it wouldn't be agreed upon procedures because the procedures would be inconsistent, and you've got to have consistent procedures to do
I see.
agreed upon procedures, and it would be best to approach it from an audit objectives
Okay.
in my
standpoint. Got me?
and the big thing there. In my former life, the objectives were kind of highlight those objectives. One was looking, was it procured properly in compliance with our contracting to start off the project? Or the part of that would be looking at purchase orders off that. Are they within the scope of that contract? The next area is looking at the billing, like we're talking about today, looking at it holistically. Hopefully they'd be all automated, but manually going in and keying in invoices and reviewing that and the support for those. Does it relate to the project? And then the other big area is saying, looking at potential compliance with Metro's conflict of interest and standard of conduct, which is something that has not been done here historically, and that's really dependent on the vendor if they're going to allow you to look into their records. There's nothing in our audit clause that says they would have to disclose that. So it just depends on the vendor if they would allow you to look into the details of that, looking at what season tickets they have, what hunting lodges they have, who's gone to those, who's on their payroll compared to those key watch list employees and their relatives in comparison to that are being entertained, or is there money going out that's unexplained? For smaller businesses, it's easier to do that. For a bigger business, that's not as easy to do. My experience, as I said, in the oil and gas business, a lot of times when we were doing 80% of the vendors or suppliers' business, if I came with a letter with the plant manager saying, we'll no longer do business with you if you don't cooperate with the auditors, they always open their books up.
Let me ask you this. Where did you land, Mark, in terms of the subcontractor reviews?
Well, that would be part of the invoicing review to see that the support's there and
Okay.
the work was done.
Okay.
Is there any, just I'm thinking about the total workflow and all the stuff that's on page 56. Is there any merit to taking some of this other architectural engineering vendor audits and outsourcing them?
I think it should all be outsourced personally.
Well, our outsource work is what percentage? What are you currently outsourcing?
Well, we outsource as needed, mainly the IT reviews that we've been doing primarily. We did the General Sessions Traffic Court School because of capacity at the time. We have $175,000 left in this budget. Assuming we have a stable budget going forward, our budget for outsourcing is $250,000 a year.
So your $1,350,000 budget, and is that right for FY19?
That's right.
That's buying about 13,000 hours of audit.
Right.
And so
And there's a factor in there for the outsourcing, trying to say how much we can buy out of that $250,000.
certainly everything north of that would need to be outsourced because you don't have the internal capacity to
Well,
do
the
it.
performance audit, I put 400 hours because we historically, if we outsourced the whole performance audit, the coordination and effort to get that accomplished would still cost us about 400 hours to get that accomplished.
So
if
the
it's a major one.
total list unedited would be about twice your current budget if you were to do 26,000 hours. If you just
Yeah, right.
did everything that was on here, it would be twice the budget. So I have a thought of this this morning, weirdly, is why is an audit paid for, or some of it paid for, by a service charge back to the departments?
It could happen.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just give you an example. When the comptroller comes in and they do an audit, Metro or any other city, they send you a bill when they finish. They do. They
Well,
send you a bill when they're done.
I wonder if that would not be a useful methodology to pursue, and then it would be less limiting audit on the basis of budget, a somewhat artificial budget number, and more on the basis of perceived need, and then it ends up being revenue neutral.
Well,
and effect
then the
to the
departments
council.
would
Complain.
speak to you about their resources.
I'm sure, but then in theory, all departments, you would try to make all departments have the pleasure of working with Mark's group.
When it first started, we were an internal service fund that
Right.
was eliminated, and
And
people would
people
say,
didn't
I see
like
this money
that.
going out, but I've never seen an auditor come, so what services am I getting?
Well, it would behoove you then to move them around, or at least to have a service fee for some of this, so to speak. And if you didn't like it, then don't have anybody whistleblowing or complaining or otherwise flagging you to come over and have an audit. And that would be a way of upsizing this, and then if it's all contracted out, or over, let's see, probably 11,000 hours or 10,000 hours is what your staff is able to produce, then everything north of that ends up being in experienced hands without any conflict, et cetera, in terms of outsourcing being a better method for doing it.
For the short term, because I don't disagree with any of that, for the short term, especially since this would tie up your folks for a third of the year, doing the architectural and engineering vendor audits. I don't know. I know Talia mentioned that at the last meeting, the idea of outsourcing that. And I don't know how many firms to do. I don't know how to right size that. I personally would say, rather than starting with 10, I'd probably start with a smaller number, outsource it, and see what we see. Because I think part of the deal about this is if we see all the firms with Collier-type issues, then we're going to want to do a lot. And if we don't, then we're going to want to sample.
We have 4 firms that are sizably greater than the others, so you could, that's on page 45, just looking at 2018.
One of those is Collier, so you've already done.
That's why I thought it
Collier.
was,
Collier's one of the 4.
that's why I thought it
The
was
others are
really
progressive.
important for us to look at this transaction and dollar volume, look at that list.
Well, yeah, and there's a couple different cutoffs there. You could stop at, I guess, the
Stop at 10, go to the top 10 if you just wanted to have a clean.
Stop at 5,
Or
and just,
5.
you've got 5 that you're looking at least initially.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would
7, you'd have 4 firms if you stopped at 7.
just, like, one of the things that people want to know, I mean, council members want to know, the public want to know, is this, are the, being charitable, the inconsistencies, is it straight across the board or is it not? And if whether we looked at the top, I don't know, you wouldn't have to, whether you pick 3, 5, or 7, you don't have to look beyond that to figure out whether it's widespread or not widespread. And I don't see a point of spending money to go all the way through the top 10 to start. But I don't know.
It makes sense to do,
I just,
to do 5.
yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't
I
you
just
do
wanted us to
5?
be objective instead of just
Yeah, I see.
have a list. That's all I was asking for.
You
Well-
guys are the accounting.
Well, you just have, down through, this is 2018, just Brown and Caldwell, at 8 million, and then the next one is 2 million. Or you could, if you're just looking at 2018, just trying to get the size of the disbursements just last year.
So that would say,
You'd stop at number 4
I'll stop at number 4,
And
just,
one
and
of those
then
have
like,
for your pilot.
just evaluate, just stop and evaluate and see what you're finding. I think the more we can do in-house with, first, it just has minimum effect on the budget, but if the hours are already there in the budget, then I guess we're okay.
I'm just thinking out loud. I see the merit of that, but on Collier, which is the starting point, we've still got, I don't know whether, I didn't ask, it didn't come up today to find out whether y'all agree with me or disagree with me about where we're at, but we've got at least some component of the audit committee not in agreement with the audit staff about how that works, and we've got elements of the public questioning too, and even if I'm completely wrong and elements of the public are completely wrong and just nuts, I'm wondering whether outsourcing provides a level of just a half step back
Objectivity.
from the thing.
And Mark, you already have contracts in place, correct?
I have contracts in place, right.
With lots of different firms in
We
the
have
company
Kraft,
in
Berry
the city.
Dunn, and E&Y, and each one of those gets more expensive.
So
depending on
you
who
could theoretically ask each of them to give you a quote and a timeline for the scope?
What I've been told I couldn't do,
What can you do?
I've been told by the purchasing agent I have to rotate through
Okay.
continuously around. So we've used Kraft, so I have to use Berry Dunn for one, and then the next one go to E&Y, then back to
Okay, so
to provide a
who would
quote.
get this engagement?
Well, it depends if you want to say, well, it's one engagement for all of them, then it would all go to Berry Dunn, or you could say each one's a separate engagement, which is probably a better way to
wanna do?
rotate around, and to have 3 different perspectives.
Let me ask another weirder question, which is Collier, the work done this year on Collier, is that not enough to know about it? Does this have to be one of the 4? I mean,
I have, I'm interested in Mr. Swan's opinion, but my opinion in the last few weeks in seeking out internal audit people and CFEs, that one of the recommendations I've received offline is that in a situation where there's an internal, natural, it's totally okay, it's completely expected tension between this is not ordinary, and Mark's staff has to operate under ordinary conditions, and there's a natural, nobody's fault tension there, and the one protection that some government agencies do will sometimes to have a parallel look. And with the Collier one, if we had an outsourced firm do that, then we would have a parallel look at similar things that would give the public comfort that, or not, I don't know.
Well, I would love our accounting professionals to give us their view of that also, if you don't
Sure,
mind, Bob,
no
just
problem.
in the sense of what's the best practice on something like this, where we've clearly spent a lot of time on one of the four in the last year, but with internal people, right?
Well, it seems to me that, if we're going to extend kind of the audit to other A&E firms, that maybe Collier is not going to be included perhaps as detailed as the other three. So if we just kind of leave Collier out, if we outsource, just
Well, is that good practice? I mean, do you need this scientific practice of everybody being evaluated in one case in a parallel track? And I'm happy to have good science.
well, it certainly would be more comparable
Okay.
if we did, all four, and if three of them were outsourced, then do all four outsourced.
I would recommend that we do the first 3 out of the 4 outside of Collier, wait till you get some of the other results from Collier, so we have all that information, and then we'll get the 3 results, and then we get Collier. But there may be this urgency of, I don't know, if there's a sense of urgency that needs to be done on it.
Well, I appreciate everybody's view. I do think it is quite interesting in a way. It's an audit of our own audit process by having an outside firm also do Collier to see if they come up with a different conclusion for any reason. And again, as a matter of pure science, you can see it being, I hate to spend 400 hours on it because there are a lot of other things that could use 400 hours too.
Fundamentally, you're talking about an investigation versus an audit too, so you're not having apples to apples, so you either say you want to redo the investigation.
No, don't want to redo that, of course. But then again, maybe the audit would be useful to the people doing the investigation.
I think it makes sense to do them all. Do the 4. Do the 4 and start at the same time. Because I think people are watching. I think it makes sense to do them. Because if you wait on Collier's and then do it after, then people are going to go, well, wait a minute, I have questions about that.
Right.
Just do it at the same time.
Okay.
Do the top 4. 4 different, you've got 3 groups, 3 firms that are out there on the contract?
Yeah, I would recommend maybe we give 2 to each one, 2 to, this case would be Barry Dunn, and 2 to E&Y, and get their results.
Just standard, your regular, just do it through your regular process, but do all 4.
Okay. And then have that 4,000 hours goes down to 2,400 hours.
And we can come back and adjust that. If you want to approve everything else with that like it is, and then you can study and we can come back and make other recommendations to fill those hours in.
I had just one question because I wasn't paying enough attention. Where's the one from the Metro clerk?
Okay.
13.
Which one?
Number
13.
Yeah, 13.
And I guess, help me understand what's the concern that's being looked for?
She sent a letter.
She was asking for consistency in lobbyist reports to payments to campaign
Oh, the
funds.
lobbyists are supposed to disclose gifts they make?
Or I assume.
I don't
know exactly what they do, but.
I don't know what they're required to do either. I guess that's why I'm confused.
Her request is in here.
Page 49.
Oh, you're better than me. Yeah, page 49. The lobbyist reports are filed annually with the office, which are required to itemize certain campaign donations to see if that matches with your candidate's financial disclosures to the election office.
just wonder whether that's idle curiosity or non-idle curiosity.
Is that something you want to know or not know?
Well, I mean, I don't care. I just, it's sort of usually when you get these things, you have some semblance of what they're looking for. I mean, how much time is that going to take you?
Well, 600 hours.
I feel like 600.
So
It's a very narrow scope. It's not like a big,
you do wonder if somebody
Are you
spending
gonna-
10 hours
is it 100%?
sampling this
Yeah, is it
would
a
be
sample or is it like 100%
what is
review?
it to see how much there, I don't know the volume or
right,
anything like that.
that you could kind of test it to see how much was,
It can't be
There.
everything.
well, and then that methodology might apply to other things too, to help guide whether you're willing to go deep.
Yeah, I mean, just because certainly as one of the elected people in the room, explore away.
You don't have to approve, you can take it off the plan to say everything except that to one.
If she wants to know, then
Substitute it for something
you
else.
should figure it out.
Well, or charge the clerk's office a service fee,
There you go.
which would be appropriate and
She's going to come visit
happy to
you.
pay. Well,
Natalia, a question too, is that it's on page 48.
Just 48, okay.
Is this, what do we have in mind to ask each firm to do? It's what's on page 48.
It's much more comprehensive than this. This is kind of a roll-up of our conversation regarding audit objectives. The actual document is
Actually, you
pretty,
can take home with you if you want.
it's pretty voluminous,
I
but
think you necessarily wanted.
Well, no, I don't want.
But I do have it here if you
My
want.
question is,
Yes.
are we asking them to do a financial audit or what we call attestation, consultation engagement, which does not result in financial statements,
Right,
but it's a
no.
performance,
We're doing it at
Yes.
attestation.
it's an attestation
We're
engagement.
going to be putting down agreed upon procedures for
Okay.
them to do.
It's very similar, I guess, to what the firm did for Collier. I mean, if you remember, we had a report at the end of their
All right.
report, and their firm had done attestation.
To the extent that the vendor allows them to go forward.
So I just want to be sure I have the understanding of the
right,
terms.
and that is,
And we're happy to
Auditors,
modify, change.
that is,
I'll let you take this one home for you.
very detailed. That is very important. That is very important.
Okay.
It's very important.
Well, do we need a motion then
For the four,
for the four?
And then I'm going to come back next time and move things around or make suggestions, is that it?
we'll wait for the initial results and determine if to expand
That's going
scope.
to be, I mean, what kind of timetable? It's going to be a while, I would.
Can you have us, bring us back a plan for how long these engagements would take for the next
No, I
meeting?
hope I should
Because we should be-
contact you all that, yeah.
Because we'll be meeting in April, right?
If you want
You
to
can
meet.
tell us how long these would
Right.
take.
So what I'd recommend is a motion to approve the plan with, instead of the whole 4,000, or to outsource those, keep the performance there, we won't do any work on it, and then we make a decision to prioritize the 4 A&E vendor audits, agreed upon procedures, and then we can start working on these other items on the plan.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye. And then just to come back, as I understand it, if you go to the 4 and you don't do number 13, you've got capacity of 13,500 hours. You have booked, you saved a lot of hours, and that if you don't do 13, you're really up to 3,800 additional hours
But you're doing 13, right?
from on.
I didn't hear you unless you, I thought you approved 13 just now.
We approved 13, I assume that
Well, we
come back to the next meeting.
It could be a
for the we were just approving the outside contracting for the 4.
That's what we just
motion.
approved.
And then when we come back and readdress the audit plan for
I thought you were approving the whole audit
the
plan.
next year,
No,
no.
that was just
I
the
was
cover.
pointing out to the
That was just
committee
A&E.
that by doing this and not doing 13 and having some additional capacity, you were really at about 3,800 hours of additional capacity under our current budget.
So I need an audit plan approved to continue to move forward in our audit efforts.
We'll need to back up because video is going to, and the audio is going to show that we approve the audit plan, because that's what the motion was.
That's what the motion was.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if
Then I
that's,
move to rescind that motion
Okay. I
and
thought,
come back.
okay.
so what do you, we should, like, taking something out is fine, but we should approve something.
Well, I thought we were approving the outside sourcing of 4 A&E vendors.
That's what I thought the motion.
Well, I
That's
think
good.
when Mark
That's what I thought
maybe
the
said it, that he said the audit plan, and maybe said
That
including
taken out.
the
Yeah.
4, but his
Okay.
intent was to include
Right, we have
everything.
to have an approved plan to continue forward. We've pretty much saturated all the audits off the previous audit approved plan.
Well,
It doesn't mean we have to do all these right away. I mean, we want, it takes a year or something to
Okay,
carry over
so-
to next year.
So we've approved this plan and we can amend it.
It can be amended, it's amended,
Anytime.
it's been amended like 1,000, well, it's 1,000, but
but the
it seems
plan
like
that's
every other month it's amended.
approved is page 55, right? Not page 56, it's page 55
right.
as a start. And on page 55, there is now additional capacity, right? That you
Today, right.
you're only doing 1,600 hours and not the 4,000
However,
hours.
based on your instructions in that motion is that we'll outsource that 4,000 hours, so that won't, and only do 4 of those at this point. So that 4,000 will be opened up that we can go forward in a future plan to figure out what to do.
The plan that's approved, and also if we took 13 out, is more like 10,000 hours that we approved, right? Rather than the 12,700. And at another date, we can fill in those hours, find additional resources conceivably, and then.
Are you making a motion to pull out number 13?
Well, did we make a motion to go on
We
13?
have to do that separately.
No.
No, he did not.
Why would we take out 13? I don't want to limit people looking at campaign finance
Okay,
disclosures.
all right.
They
So I
should.
think,
Okay.
I think what may be smart to do is check with the clerk if you have a question about it.
Okay, I was
Check with the
misinterpreting
clerk.
Bob's.
And then you can always come back at the next meeting, and if there's a
Sorry.
reason not to.
I was misinterpreting Bob's comments as to sample that before you committed to the full 600 hours, but then this would commit us to the 600 hours.
I think we've approved it with the 600 in, and I'm happy to leave it in. I trust that Mr. Swan and his team, if they start looking at it and see there's no there, that they
Okay.
won't spend the 600
They won't
hours.
spend that.
Depends on how quick, how much it,
All right, but then otherwise, we've approved a 10,300 hour plan.
Yes.
We approved an entire plan, took care of the 4 vendors, and moved that separately, and everything else on that page got approved.
Right, and so John's point is, with the 4,000 hour one being a lot less due to outsourcing, that there's additional capacity.
Pick up other things.
Yes.
And
and there's a list over here that you can study for
Yes.
future or
So at the
something
next
new to
meeting,
come up.
You can come up with a whole slate of things to do.
There's additional capacity, and then there's conceivably the potential of additional funding, which can go into other capacity.
Right.
so we can talk about that more next time.
Through.
I'm through.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair.
I'll pass it to you,
Great.
Chair.
You know, is there anything else? We are going to be meeting.
The schedule for the regular schedule is for April.
Is there anything else on our agenda we need to cover today?
The information there I gave you on the audit follow-up, which is 141 open recommendations. There was 4 that we still haven't received anything from. I put an X on there. That information's there for you to see. And then the big wide sheet is, you'd asked for us to try to say which ones are more significant findings. So this was an attempt to try to say, at least done internally between the 2 audit principals and myself, are saying what we believe were more significant of the open recommendations. So,
Okay, if it's okay with the committee, you want to kind of push this to April so we can look at it? You don't want to comment on it now?
Yeah, I think pushing it to April is great. I will want to think about for April whether we want to come up with a request to have department chairs who've got items on this that aren't taken care of, that are really old, to come talk to us about why.
Okay. Is there
But we can talk about that next time.
a need for an executive session? Saying none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.